Welcome to our cityCURRENT radio show. I'm Andrew Bartolotta, Director of Digital Media here at cityCURRENT. And today's guest is the founder and CEO of Volunteer Odyssey, Dr. Sarah Pechnick. Sarah, I am so excited for our audience to learn more about you, Volunteer Odyssey, and your one-stop shop for meaningful volunteer opportunities here in Memphis.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Andrew. It's so good to actually get to talk to you and connect. I'm really excited to be talking with you today.
Throughout this pandemic, your organization has helped guide various nonprofits to sort of rethink the ways that they can volunteer through virtual volunteer opportunities. Now, before we dive into what you've been able to do with that, you launched 2013. Give listeners a quick history of your organization.
Yeah, Volunteer Odyssey, we started in 2013. Andrew did all of his homework, and we began as a place for people who were job seeking to come and volunteer. And we grew really quickly from there once we understood how many people in the community wanted to give back and wanted to connect with volunteer opportunities really quickly and easily to find something meaningful. So today we've grown to what we are now. We've been around for about 8 years and are just really excited to connect people with meaningful volunteer opportunities in the community, exactly like you said.
We've seen some really cool stories of volunteers landing jobs and landing board positions, new friends, lifelong volunteer opportunities at various nonprofits. Recently, we saw a story on Volunteer Odyssey social media about a man who lost his job during the pandemic and used your organization to sort of give back during his free time. Which also landed him to a really cool, exciting opportunity. Can you share more to our listeners about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you mentioned that because this is one of my favorite stories that we've had about our volunteers during this pandemic. We had a gentleman named Mark who had lost his job right at the beginning of the COVID outbreak, and he decided to spend that time volunteering. And so he got on Volunteer Odyssey and he looked at a couple different options and he started volunteering with Catholic Charities at their mobile food distribution. So right at the beginning of COVID, when people were scared to go indoors and to be around people, he was coming every day to do an outdoor food distribution. And after a couple months, Catholic Charities realized what a great asset he was and what a wonderful worker he was. And they were able to add him full time to their staff to help with some of their warehouse logistics and management. Just one of my favorite stories. He went from doing something, as a volunteer and turning that into his life's work. It's a great story.
How does the corporate community collaborate with Volunteer Odyssey through Give Back Days or part of their giving efforts?
Yeah, that's a great question. We work with corporations in a couple different ways. So we can provide essentially a corporate social responsibility department for your organization if that's something that you're trying to grow. So help you think through how you could start a volunteer program for your organization. And we work with large companies who already have those efforts in place, and we coordinate days of service. They can be for small groups, they can be for big groups, full days of service, kind of everything in between. So if anybody is looking for opportunities to get your staff involved in volunteering, either in person or remotely, we'd love to talk to them about that.
And I would also like to add, as a Volunteer Odyssey user, that we love sort of the subgroups that you can have on your website. Like cityCURRENT can have, I think we have like over 100 members that are able to sort of plug in their volunteer hours too. So I think that's also great for service organizations, like membership organizations, chambers and what have you, to really share their impact. I love sort of one thing that I really admire about Volunteer Odyssey is the data that you collect and sort of the data that you're able to provide to the city, the Mid-South, that really shows the impact that Mid-Southerners are doing through volunteerism.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. And as you well know by this point in the years that we've known each other, I am quite the data nerd. And so I get very excited when we can see data. And it's such an important tool. So we can see if we're going in the right direction, if volunteers are having a good experience, and we can see the economic impact that everyone is making on the community. So we're almost at $6 million of economic impact just in the last couple of years since we've been using this software, which is pretty incredible. And it's really powerful for corporations and schools and groups to see the impact that you're making over time on the Memphis community.
Now, you said you love data. What also puts a smile on your face when you look at the work that you do each day at Volunteer Odyssey?
Yeah, I love being able to connect people with the help that they need or to a way to give their skills. And so, one of the other things that we did recently, we were working with MakeAWish, and they said that they really needed Spanish speaking wish granters. And so, we worked with some of our media partners and using our social media to help find multiple people who raised their hands to say that they would love to be a bilingual wish granter, which is just so wonderful. And those are the kinds of things that it's always inspiring to see Memphians step up and say, oh, you need help with that? I can do that. I have this special skill. And that's how we make change and make things move forward.
Now, speaking of skills-based volunteerism, recently you've partnered with the city of Germantown to help with their COVID-19 vaccination efforts and are in need of a lot of both skilled volunteers, say nurses or medical personnel, and those willing to help with the logistics part of it. Can you talk about this effort underway and where people can learn more?
Yeah, I'm really glad that we have a chance to talk about that today, Andrew. As I'm sure everybody knows, vaccination is key right now. And it takes a lot of people and a lot of time and a lot of hands to make that happen. So we're really proud to be partnering with City of Germantown and City of Collierville on the vaccination site in Germantown to try and get as many people vaccinated as possible. And so if you're interested in becoming a volunteer, come to volunteerodyssey.com, click that volunteer tab. You can see all the current volunteer opportunities, including this current need vaccinating in the city of Germantown.
So diving further into that, where is the Germantown site and how does that work?
Yeah, the Germantown site is at Germantown Baptist Church, which is on Poplar at the Poplar-Collierville line. And I think it's important to note that this site is not for vaccinating Germantown residents. This is part of the larger vaccination effort. So it's a resource for the entire county.
So one of my questions was who's actually getting the vaccinations at this site? And so that would be Shelby Countyans as a whole, correct?
Correct. But again, open to all Shelby County residents. This is not specifically for Germantown or for Collierville.
That's great. Now, what do the volunteers do if they sign up to volunteer at this site?
Yeah, so volunteers are really kind of the heartbeat of this site. We need volunteers to do all kinds of things. So the site is entirely outside, so I want people to be prepared for that. But you will help make sure that people are supposed to be there for their appointments, that they're expected, that they have their appointment confirmation. You help us get all the paperwork ready so that they can fill it out on the clipboards as they're moving up to get their shot at the vaccination tent. You help refill and run supplies to make sure everything is running like clockwork, and just help all the city staff make sure that everything is running smoothly and that people are ready to be vaccinated.
Are there any sort of parameters for volunteers who can volunteer at this site?
Yeah, so right now our primary need is for non-medical volunteers. So the general public, so probably most of you who are listening, we need people who are at least 18 years of age. And like I said, it is an outside site. So you need to be prepared for the weather, both in terms of temperature and precipitation. And you need to be able to stand and walk for the duration of your shift. So shifts are about 3.5 hours long. So just come prepared, but we will definitely need your help in the time that you're there.
Great. Now we've talked about the city of Germantown and Collierville. We've talked about Catholic Charities. What are some other organizations that utilize Volunteer Odyssey to help recruit volunteers?
So we work with nonprofits all around the Memphis area. One of our newest partners is Memphis Animal Services. And as you can imagine, they have a lot of animals who need help. They need transport fosters. They need people to come out and help exercise the animals. So that would be a huge one. We've started working with WYXR in Crosstown, which is also a local radio station. And they are going to be part of our upcoming virtual volunteer day, which is Friday, April 23rd. And so we are going to have a bunch of different nonprofits in Memphis represented that day if you're looking for a great sort of day of service to get involved. You know, during the pandemic, it's been really interesting because before COVID started, our calendar had hundreds of volunteer opportunities on it. And then, as you can imagine, we had to really kind of tear everything down when COVID began and in-person volunteering essentially came to a halt. But so with that, we saw this huge rise in the demand for people saying that they wanted to contribute in virtual and remote volunteer ways from home. And that was really incredible. And so as we figured out how to do that, we got all those opportunities on our platform. And then we saw these in-person volunteer opportunities start to come back for essential services. So things like food distribution, clothing closets, doing Meals on Wheels, things like that. And so it's been really incredible to see kind of the evolution and how adaptable and flexible our nonprofits are. And so right now, to your question, we're working with about 50 nonprofits in the Memphis area. And we have dozens of opportunities on the calendar every single month where you can see and sign up for opportunities instantly. And so I think one of the statistics we're most proud of is how many opportunities we have and how quickly you can find something, how little time it will take you to connect with a meaningful experience in Memphis.
Yes, I love how easy it is for a Memphian, a Mid-Southerner, to go on Volunteer Odyssey's website and just immediately find ways to serve. I think that's such a cool way to give back, but it takes the barriers away of endless Google hours of searching and trying to figure out those organizations around you. What would you like to see as a volunteer hub, a volunteer center in our city to help advance Memphis?
Yeah, I think that's a really thoughtful question, Andrew. And I think one of the things that we need people to do and that we need in order to get back to that sense of normalcy is people to wear their masks and come volunteer for things like COVID testing site, COVID vaccination sites, and making sure that our friends and our neighbors in our community have enough food and water and supplies to kind of get back to normal. And then once things are back to normal, we of course look forward to doing more group volunteer projects again, bringing back our full day of service where you can come and volunteer all throughout the community and we get together to celebrate afterwards. And so there are things that we can all do to help move us towards that. And anybody who's willing to come help with vaccinations, we would greatly, greatly appreciate your help.
Now, how can people support your efforts at Volunteer Odyssey?
Yeah, so people can support Volunteer Odyssey in two ways. By volunteering, obviously, for organizations in the community or for Volunteer Odyssey directly. And of course, we always need donations. Nonprofits, run on big hearts, but we run on money too. And so if anybody would like to donate, we would really appreciate that. And you can also list us as your Amazon Smile charity or list us on your Kroger card so we can get some donations in that way as well.
Now, we've talked about the corporate side, we've talked about the nonprofit side and the individual side. Give us a few tips when it comes to a nonprofit, maybe a smaller nonprofit. They don't know sort of the volunteer opportunities they can produce. What are some ways, creative ways that you've seen nonprofits utilize volunteers to advance their mission?
Yeah, we will often ask our nonprofits, we'll say, if I gave you a magic wand and you could have someone come in and help with anything that you needed, what would it be? And you kind of see people's eyes light up. Everybody kind of has that wish list in the back of their mind. And so we really encourage people not just to think about what is possible, but what is needed, and to talk to their other staff at the organization and some of their volunteers about, okay, what could we really do if we had enough people and if we had enough talent? And it's really inspiring to hear the things that people kind of come up with when they're asked that question. And so if you can kind of suspend, reality for a second, think about what all the possibilities are in terms of your volunteers. And I think you'd be really surprised at all the ways people can meet those needs and how we can help.
Where can people go to learn more about Volunteer Odyssey, to find a volunteer opportunity, or if you're a business, connect with you to talk about a virtual volunteer day for businesses or in-person volunteering?
Yeah, great question. So you can come to our website, which is volunteerodyssey.com. We're, of course, on all the major social media channels as well. But if you have a specific question about how to get your corporation connected to service opportunities, or if you're hearing this and just thinking, well, I really want to volunteer, but I need somebody to point me in the right direction. I want to talk to somebody about how I can help. We'd be glad to do that too. And so anybody can send me an email at Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, at volunteerodyssey.com, and we'd love to talk to you.
And lastly, just as a fun question, what is a quote or saying that you live by to inspire Memphians to give back, or just that you sort of have in your head every day that helps you move forward through these uncertain times?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a quote necessarily as much as, you can't really see it on my shelf back here, but I have this hourglass that I keep by my desk, and it just kind of reminds me of how important it is that we get out and volunteer. You know, that time is of the essence. There are people who need help, and there's something that all of us can do to make a difference. And so this is kind of what I think of when I picture that urgency, but also like how much we can each help to make something small.
I love that. That's great. Now, one more
Sorry,
time,
that
where can
wasn't a
people go?
quote.
No, that's great. That's great. Where can one more time, where can people go to learn more about Volunteer Odyssey and to give back?
Yeah, please come visit us at volunteerodyssey.com or on any of our social media channels through Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Dr. Petchnik, you're a friend and you're a change maker in our community. Thank you for joining us today and continuing to power the good in our community.
Well, thank you for having me, Andrew, and thank you to everything cityCURRENT is doing to help keep us on track and motivated during these really unusual times. We're really proud to partner with you.
Absolutely.